we could see a mass consolidation of the regulated infrastructure in this industry towards the hands of just a few players who will then form an oligarchy, which is not possible to displace and will basically end the American cryptocurrency marketplaces.
Charles Hoskinson is the co-founder of Ethereum and Cardano blockchains. In this highlight, Hoskinson explains his fears about the future of crypto and what needs to be done to prevent another FTX catastrophe. Will the government use this as an excuse to heavily regulate crypto? Let's find out.
Many of you know FTX has collapsed. It's declared bankruptcy and it's going to be unable to honor its obligations. It went from a crypto empire that spanned from Solana and Polygon all the way to Masari and everything in between to basically a existential threat to the stability of the cryptocurrency ecosystem in about 48 hours. Now, in hindsight, in reflection, there were enormous warning signs ranging from the talent that was at FTX to the governance of the company to the fiscal strategy that they followed. How they invested their money, where they chose to deploy it, the statements that they made in reflection, they don't look so solid. And this is generally what happens when you have regulated businesses that are in a position of trust led by kids who have no experience. It's okay to have young entrepreneurs, and it's okay to have inexperienced people have great visions and dreams and pursue those things. But the first thing that happens when you're a young entrepreneur, because I'm still young and I was very young when I entered this industry, is that once you're given money, you have to bring together a diverse team of people and have that team of people work with you to build something great. If you look at IO, my CFO has over 35 years of experience on Wall Street. He was chief operating officer at Mizuho. He was personally responsible for hundreds of billions of dollars of various commodities and other things at the trading desk he was on and the regulated financial institutions he was at. He's a very experienced guy. General counsel is a JD MBA, a senior partner at a law firm when we hired him, and went to Wharton, went to many places. He did the Overstock stock offering for crypto, did a lot of stuff, and is one of the domain experts in the merger of traditional law and cryptocurrencies, as well as the regulatory intersection. Within our circle, we have advisors, external, internal, and people that have lifetimes worth of experience on strategy, marketing, operations, and everything in between, who have been accountable for billions of dollars. We're not a regulated business. We're just a cryptocurrency protocol developer. You need this plus if you look to things like a exchange or a trading desk or something where you have a fiduciary responsibility for other people's money. It's axiomatic, and it's the first thing you do as an entrepreneur. Now, the absence of this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fail or not be able to survive. You can certainly find ways to rise to occasion, but it's definitely true that on average, if you need surgery, it's probably a pretty good idea to go to a qualified surgeon instead of somebody who stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. And too much of this has happened in the industry, whether we look at Celsius, whether we look at Mt. Gox and the qualified people there or lack thereof, we look at any of these institutions that have failed. Generally speaking, when you look at it, it's a people, procedure, and process problem as much as it is a flawed business idea. Standards, regulation, and oversight do tend to help from the perspective of forcing you either through soft power like SROs and memberships and hard power through explicit regulation in getting at least to that statement of safety. It is important to point out that this was not an unregulated business. And there's been enormous amounts of discussion about, well, how should cryptocurrency react? Look at the unregulated cryptocurrency. This is frankly a centralized business failing. Bitcoin was not hacked. Ethereum was not hacked. Cardano was not hacked. None of the big chains were hacked. Crypto didn't fail. People failed. People in positions of trust. At the end of the day, as much as we like to believe in the principles of cryptocurrency, this had everything to do with people putting their money in centralized exchanges and organizations entrusting centralized businesses to do something on their behalf. That's the very industry we're trying to get rid of with the cryptocurrency space. Unfortunately, it's going to now be conflated, and there's a very high possibility that the fallout of this will be new legislation, hopefully decent legislation, but there's a strong possibility that it won't be. As members of this industry, we're just going to have to live with it, and we're going to have to figure out ways to integrate and deal with it. But this is unfortunately the consequence when you have people who don't know what they're doing, get into positions of power and trust, and create cascading and catastrophic damage. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you look at the financial relationships that FTX had, as we go down the list, it could create a cascade of insolvencies. And unfortunately, crypto doesn't get a bailout. Our competitors do. TradFi lives with that every day. They'd already be calling up their buddies in government saying, how big of a check can we haggle over? With crypto, we don't get that. We just get the privilege of cleaning up the mess and then being blamed for it and having to deal with the financial outcome ourselves. Now, I do believe this is not going to kill cryptocurrency. I do believe that our industry will be much stronger in the future. And I do believe that our best days are still ahead of us. This said, I do believe that unlike Mt. Gox, unlike Celsius, unlike Luna and past events, FTX does have the unique property that it could end up being the straw that breaks the camel's back and changes, at least in the short to midterm, how cryptocurrencies work in America. It is also a possibility that we could see a mass consolidation of the regulated infrastructure in this industry towards the hands of just a few players who will then form an oligarchy, which is not possible to displace and will basically end the American cryptocurrency marketplace as we used to enjoy it. Now, I'm not saying this will happen. I'm saying that the probability of these types of things happening is now greater as a direct result of the failure of FTX. The reason being is that unlike Celsius and Luna, the principals at FTX had a direct relationship with many politicians in Washington, D.C. Already on Twitter, you may have noticed many pictures of politicians, mostly on the left, but some on the right, and Sam Brinkman and his cohorts. He made no small deal out of the fact that he was dumping millions of dollars into elections and into influence and lobbying to try to push through specific legislation. That meant that there are a lot of politicians who now don't want to have that relationship, and as a result, will probably try to scrub it by becoming unnecessarily harsh on cryptocurrencies as a predictable reaction. That's why the needle's moved a lot. In addition to the consumer losses that are going to occur, the institutional losses that are going to occur, and potentially the set of cascading failures that can occur. This industry doesn't seem to have learned its lesson. The YouTube podcaster class that mock the Cardanos of the world and talk about how stupid we are and how small our TVL is and these types of things. They continue to be arrogant and petulant. They continue to peddle snake oil advice. They continue to recommend people dump large sums of money into completely unvetted programs and projects. It is what it is. I hope the audiences wise up and realize that maybe their advice has been horrifically bad this year and last year and so forth. More projects continue to get funding without really that much due diligence. And it's very clear that VCs continue to be quite interested in getting involved in these things. I believe one of the investors in FTX was Sequoia. It was supposed to be one of the smartest and best put together VCs in the entire business. And they took a significant loss from their time at FTX. Celebrities have been impacted as well. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen, for example, had a considerable amount of money in FTX, as did others, who will undoubtedly now become quite disenfranchised and potentially leverage their considerable networks to attack and criticize the industry. At what point does the industry stand up and say, we've had enough, things need to change, and we need to think of a new path forward? For our part, the mission is unchanged. The approach is unchanged because this is what we think everybody should be doing. Come the 18th, in just 7 days, I'll be in Scotland. There, we're going to announce the Edinburgh Decentralization Index to begin measuring the decentralization of cryptocurrencies. We do recommend that best practices for the operations of exchanges be set forward and people start following them. We do recommend that also in DeFi, we get a lot more honest about what can and cannot be done as an industry and start coming together on basic standards for this type of thing. Smart contract security standards and symmetrical functionality standards. I hope people begin to wise up. I also hope that people understand that nothing is for free in life. You cannot get massive returns and massive yields. They have to come from somebody. Not too long ago, last year, I criticized the big surge of Doge, not because I had anything against the founders of that project or the people participating in it, but because it so perfectly epitomized the attitude of get rich quick. Every single person I knew who was purchasing that currency was doing so because they had a mistaken belief that they could double, triple, quadruple their money in a matter of days, weeks, or months. And the vast majority of them lost it. That is a mentality which will end the cryptocurrency space if it's preserved and maintained. It has always been the goal to focus on our side of the aisle, use and utility and adoption, and the fact that this really is an industry that can fundamentally transform and change things. There is no other way. If you get hurt in a place like Congo or Burundi, or while skiing in Aspen, and you live in Canada, for your medical records to be seamlessly transmitted while you're unconscious to the doctors trying to take care of you there. Blockchain solved that problem. There is no way that we will be able to rebuild the entire world's supply chains, given that there are many nations, many laws, and such a large global footprint to comply with ESG mandates that are being haggled on by world nations. There is no way that we can ever get to a point where every person is banked.
Check out this viral video next, where Ray Dalio reveals how the current economic crisis is much worse than we thought it was and what to buy to preserve your wealth.